G'day, another quick speaker review for you here today. This is on my KUN26R Toyoa Hilux. It will apply to anything from the 05 through to the circa 2015 of this series, if it's in single cab, extra cab, dual cab, across the different variants that were made available in this series. Or certainly as it relates to the single cab, because this is a single cab utility. It would also apply to the dual cab, but only as far as the front doors, because obviously this doesn't have back doors. This was a speaker upgrade I did a few years ago, about 2 years ago, and the components used in this upgrade are still available today, so now we're reviewing them. I have not used Rockford Fosgate speakers before. This was my first foray into using Rockford Fosgate speakers. This is what's installed in the front of this. This is a single cab utility, and in a separate video I will detail soundproofing this one, because what I did when I upgraded the stereo is I was really disappointed. This runs a snorkel and it attracts a bit of noise from the from wind noise from the snorkel, and I found it, I was ever putting the speakers up in this ute while I was driving along at highway speed, which was a bit disappointing. So what I looked to do was install an amplifier. I went to a 2-channel amp and then upgrade my speakers, went to the Rockford Fosgate speakers, and at the same time I extensively sound deadened the vehicle. And I'll detail that in another video. You can see some of the remnants of that installation with some soundproofing on the door that you can see here. There's also soundproofing on the door skin in there. But in any event, did a lot of soundproofing in this to try and improve the NVH of the vehicle. It did make a huge difference, and it makes the ute a lot more pleasant a place to be now, a lot more pleasant than it used to be. And we'll look at that in another video. But as specific as it is to this video, this is detailing my speaker upgrade. Now that was they're Rockford Fosgate 6.75-inch component speakers, or you might say 6.75-inch splits, as is commonly known, and it's the P1675s. You could also run the T1675s as well, which is a higher grade speaker. This is a cheap and cheerful speaker, but this is for a vehicle that's used largely for work processes. Work processes. That's not word processes. That's work processes. Bouncing across paddocks. So I didn't want to spend a whole heap of money, but I do a lot of driving in this ute, so I wanted it to be, something reasonably good. I went for a set of splits because I just prefer splits if I'm going to run an amplifier. It separates your tweeter from your driver, so that's a good thing. The reason I went for these, principally I had an old 2-channel amplifier. I had an old Kenwood 2-channel amplifier, and these speakers match the power that amplifier would drive. That's principally the reason I went for it, but also they're 6.75s rather than 6.5s. If you're going to run a 6.5-inch speaker in this series vehicle, one thing you need to be aware of is you're going to need to run a spacer. Now there's a few different people that'll sell you a spacer, but AirPro do one. The part number is APS334, and that's a 165mm spacer. It costs you about 20 bucks. I didn't really want a spacer just because I was doing this on a budget. I didn't really want the outlay of another $20, so I just bought these ones, the larger speaker. It matched the amplifier I was using, which was just one that I had lying around, the installation was quite easy and fine. So what you'll do is you can take the factory speaker out, and then you will need to drill a couple of holes because they won't all line up. But you can mount that straight to your door. I haven't found this. I drive a lot of the time, particularly in summer in this ute, with the window down. I haven't found it to foul on having no spacer there. It's sat in there quite fine. I've been running this for a couple of years now, a-okay. So how have I found it? It's been fine. I wouldn't say it's outstanding, but it is a cheap speaker. You get what you pay for. And for the price I paid, for the increase in audio quality I got off the factory speakers, I did run this initially without an amplifier. I ran it just as the 2 speakers alone, and it was an improvement. It wasn't a massive improvement, but it was definitely an improvement. But adding the the sound deadening in the amplifiers made a big difference and really allowed the speakers to shine. They're a lot better. As with a recent review I did on my audio upgrade in my Dodge Ram, one thing you do want to be aware of here is that if you're running the same head unit that I am, which is an Extron's unit, it doesn't have an amplifier power wire output coming out of it, so you've got to figure that out another way. You've either got to run a switch or you've got to run power another way. What I've done here is it's the power in on your head unit, so as soon as the head unit turns on, the amplifier turns on, but that means if you're not playing music, the amplifier is still switched on. So you'll be aware of that, but in any event, no power wire output on this head unit, which is, it's just a, you know, an omission from Extron's. You can check out my review of the Extron's head unit in another video, which I've done. So overall, am I happy with it? Yeah, it's not too bad. You know, for a budget speaker, would I buy it again? Sure. The fact that I don't need to run a spacer, it's fine. Matches with the amp that I have pretty well. The audio quality is quite acceptable. You know, if I was going to put this in my daily drive that wasn't a bash about farm ute that I was going to use to drive to the city every now and again, I probably would spend the additional money, and I would probably go the next level up, or, you know, a higher end speaker with a better quality amp rather than using one that was just lying around in my shed. That's probably what I would have done. But for this stage, it's passable. I'm certainly not looking to upgrade it. It's fine, it does everything I want to, and the audio quality is quite acceptable. I will put the door trim, so to pull the door trim off this, it's pretty easy. There's videos on that. I'll grab the door trim. There's the door trim here. That's your door trim. I do need to connect my tweeter before I put it back on again, because I've got a connector here for when I pull it off. So this is an old style kind of door trim. It just sits in there like that. And then you'll bang the clips in. And then you'll find, so I had to drill that in. There's no spot for a tweeter here. The other spot you could have put it is that's a trim piece that goes in there. I could have drilled a hole in there. There's lots of space in the back of that. I could have put it in there. I elected to mount the tweeter in there, which is fine, neither here nor there. But you do have a couple of points to do that. To get the door trim off, that sits in there. You undo one Phillips head screw, you lift that out. There's another Phillips head screw in behind your door handle. And then you have a push clip in here. Just push the center in and that'll pop out, that'll release. Pull this off, door trim comes off. Just grab it from around the side, pull it, and it'll come off. Pretty simple. So yeah, I find the speakers quite fine. The real plus for them is if you're just going to run them off your head unit is you don't need to run a spacer. The 6.75 will fit in there fine. But I would say if you are just going to run them without an amplifier and you do have a single cab, it's a noisy place to be. I mean, I know the snorkel doesn't help with this truck, but either way, it's a pretty noisy place to be, and you want to be aware of that going in. You know, it's just something you've got to factor in because your speakers are going to be working harder just because of the ambience and the noise inside the cabin. If you're interested in that, if you've got a single cab ute, not just limited to a Hilux, but any single cab ute, you might want to look for the upcoming video where I detail the soundproofing I did in this vehicle, because one of the reality is when you're buying, this is an SR Hilux, so that at the time this was launched in the KUN 26R series, when this was launched, the SR was kind of middle of the range. The SR5 was the top, the SR was the next one down, and then you had the Workmate underneath. As a middle of the range vehicle, it's pretty basic in terms of soundproofing and trim. So I have changed a bit of the trim around and I have improved the sound deadening. Watch for a future video on that if you're interested. But for this one, that's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching.